Like to hear stories about real life events and watch people play a game that closely matches that real life event, then you're in the right place. My name is Granny, and I'm going to tell real life events that happen, and I'm going to find the game that closely matches that true life event. So just sit down, get ready to listen to the story. Don't forget, before you go, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. Click that notification bell. You'll be notified of any uploads that we do in the future. Alright, let's get into this. The story I'm going to tell today is about Juliane Koepcke, the girl who fell 2 miles from the sky and lived to tell the tale when her plane was struck by lightning. It is still considered the deadliest lightning strike in aviation history. The game I chose today that most closely resembles our story is The Forest. While this story doesn't contain cannibals and she wasn't trying to find her son Timmy, she did crash into the middle of the forest and had to find her way out of that forest and into safety again. So let's get to the story. With Juliana's father being a zoologist and her mother being an ornithologist, or one who studies birds, and her knowledge of the Amazon rainforest from her parents' studies, she had a pretty good understanding of what she needed to do to survive. Our story begins on Christmas Eve in 1971. Juliane Koepcke, then 17 years old, was on LANSA Flight 508 with her mother. It had been 1 day since her senior prom and mere hours since her high school graduation. They were heading to celebrate with her father. During the flight, a storm appeared and lightning was flashing brightly outside of her plane window. However, Juliana was a frequent flyer and not afraid of the storm. All of a sudden, lightning struck the wing of the plane just outside of her window. Her mother at that moment said, "Now it's over." Heck of a thing for your mom to say right as lightning hits the plane. Suddenly, the plane engine began to roar and people began screaming. The plane started to plummet towards the ground, breaking apart as it went down. Her mother was sucked from her seat and Juliana was sucked out of the plane, still strapped to her seat. Juliana would later recall that there was a moment of peace, even as her seat was spinning like a helicopter blade and falling towards the canopy of trees below. At some point before reaching the ground, Juliana lost consciousness. After reaching the ground, but before she fully gained consciousness, she must have unbuckled her seatbelt, because when she did finally wake up, her seatbelt had been undone. Juliana didn't know the extent of her injuries, but she did have a deep laceration on one of her legs, which thankfully wasn't bleeding due to her body being in shock. There was a large gaping wound on her arm that was infested with maggots. When she tried to move, she said that her body felt like jelly or cotton because it didn't respond like it normally would have. She looked at her watch, which was still working at the time, and saw that it was 9 a.m. It was raining heavily, and so she crawled under her seat as best as she could to get out of the rain because she was cold and wet. It would be a day and a half before she would begin walking, and she feared for her mother. When she finally was able to start walking, she decided to search for other survivors. She found several bodies of fellow passengers from the plane, but the impact had caused the bodies to sink 3 feet into the mud. One of the bodies was a woman whose feet was sticking out of the ground. Juliana poked the body with a stick and then removed one of the shoes. She noticed that the woman in the ground had painted toenails and knew that it was not her mother because her mother did not paint her toenails. Not having found any other survivors, Juliana knew the only way to survive was to actually start walking and try and find civilization for herself. As she walked, she could hear the search planes overhead, but the canopy from the trees was so thick that she couldn't see the planes and the planes couldn't see her either. After a few days on her journey, the plane sounds stopped, and at that point she knew that they had stopped searching for survivors. In the eyes of the rescuers, it was now just a body recovery. Hungry, Juliana tried to catch some of the frogs that she saw in hopes of eating them, but they were too fast for her and she was not able to catch them. And it's a good thing that she didn't, because it turns out that they were dart frogs, which are poisonous and would have been the end of her. She was also thirsty, but she was able to find a well where she was able to drink. She also found a bag of candy, which she ate one piece of every day until she ran out to survive. Having lost one of her shoes and her glasses, Juliana had to be extra cautious because not only were there poisonous vegetation and frogs, there were also snakes and other wildlife. As she followed the water, she encountered several spots where there were trees that had fallen and covered the path, and you could tell that no one had been on that path in a long time. She continued to follow the water for 10 days, and on the 10th day she found a boat. She saw a small path near the boat and decided to follow it. At this point she was so weak that all she could do was crawl, but she still made her way up the path. At the end of the path was a hut with a can of gas sitting outside. The wound on her arm had become extremely painful because the maggots had started burrowing further down into the wound. As a child, she had seen her father treat a dog with a similar wound by using kerosene and pouring some of it onto the wound. So she decided to suck some of the gas out of the can and put it into her own wound. She was then able to pick out 30 maggots, and later rescuers would pick out another 50 more. She tried to sleep under the hut, covered with a tarp, but the ground was too hard, so she returned to the boat and slept there for the night. The next morning she returned to the hut, where she found 3 Peruvian men, who at first thought that she was a water spirit because of her blonde hair. But Juliana spoke perfect Spanish and was able to communicate with the men in their own language and explained what had happened to her. The next day they carried her to the boat down to the river to a local hospital where she was treated for her wounds. All of the people on the plane had perished, including her mother, and the crash almost claimed another life. A film director named Werner Herzog, due to a last-minute change in his plans, he canceled his flight and therefore escaped the crash. He would later create a documentary of Juliana's survival tale called Wings of Hope. Do you think you could survive like Juliane Koepcke did? If so, what step would you take? Would you do as she did and follow a water source, or would you stay put and build a signal fire, or perhaps an SOS message on a beach? Or would you do like a video game and make the most of a bad situation and start to building a camp and just survive? Let me know in the comments below if you have a story that you would like for me to tell, or even just a subject matter. Comment that below, and I will find a game that matches the story as closely as I can and tell you the requested tale. I want to thank you for watching, but before you go, please smash that like button, be sure to subscribe, and press that notification bell so that you are notified when I upload new stories. I will try to upload at least once a week, hopefully more. Once again, thanks for watching. Keep gaming, people. We'll catch you on the flip side.